Hi, all. I just wanted to pop in and introduce myself. I'm Terry Brooks. I work for Child Care Resources. I'm sure all of you have gotten an email from me by now. And I was hoping that I could arrange a virtual meeting, live meeting, so that we all could meet, but it doesn't appear that that is going to be able to happen. So we're going to try it this way. We're going to try something new. And, you know, everything that we try these days seems to be something new. So we're just working our way through it together. So I'm still going to work through coaching you through the assessment process, because from what I understand, that's going to be happening fairly soon. So what I think I'm going to do is just use these recordings as a way to get information to you, and you can do the same thing back at me. You can send me emails, you can send me text messages. I'll make sure you have all of my information, and we'll go through certain aspects of the environment rating scale, and we'll take it from there. And along the way, you may have homework, you may have goals that I would like you to reach for. My job is to help you achieve the highest score possible when it's time for you to go through assessment. So that's what we're aiming to do here. So today, what I want to do really, really quickly with you is give you kind of a crash course on the environment rating scales if you've never been through it before. I'm going to share my screen with you and kind of show you, bear with me while I pull this up, show you what's going to be what here. Okay, I'm hoping that you're seeing my screen. On the screen, that what you're seeing is the ERS book, or the Infant Toddler Environment Rating Scale. This is the tool that is used for assessment. If you're working with the younger children, infants and toddlers, then you're using the ERS, this blue book. If you are working with preschoolers, then you're using this yellow book. This is the ERS book that you're using. And the age cutoff for using these books, for the ERS book, these are children 0 to 31 months, or 0 to 30 months. The ERS is 31 months and up. So the only room that's really iffy is that 2-year-old room. And the way they're going to judge that room is going to be based on the number of children under 30 months versus the number of children over 30 months. So it's whatever the highest percentage is. So it should be 50% plus 1 in either direction. So that's usually a little bit of a tricky room for that. I kind of want to take you through the book just a little bit and show you things like how scoring works. So we'll start with the ERS book here, since pretty much both of them are somewhat the same. When the day of assessment, what they're looking at is everything. So this is your overview of the subscales and items on the ERS R, and you see here space and furnishings, personal care routines, listening and talking, activities, interactions, program structures. This one I'm not going to focus with you as teachers too much. That's pretty much administrative kinds of things there, but we will deal with the rest of this stuff. And the more meetings we have, the more we'll break these down. So today we're just kind of doing the overview. So as you can see, there's 39 different areas that you are being assessed in. The way scoring works, these different items are broken down individually, and they're each scored individually. So this is under space and furnishings. This is number 1, indoor space. Each item is scored on a 1 to 7 scale, 1 being inadequate, 7 being excellent. Of course, you're aiming for that 7, and you may get 7s in some of these items. I will promise you, you're not going to get 7s in every item. Some of these things are just not in your control, or some of them are not in anybody's control. So what you're doing is you're taking all 39 items and you're averaging. And then that average becomes your total score. So they judge column by column when they're scoring. So you've got to score everything in this column, and then you move on to score everything in this column, and then you move on, and it's a yes or a no answer. So you have to score a yes for everything in this column to achieve this score and be able to move on to this column. Then you score everything there to be able to move on. The first no that you receive is the column that your scoring stops in. So, and it's a little bit tricky, because if I score a yes in everything in this column, and then I move to column with a score of 5, and let's say I score a yes, and then I score a no and a no. Well, what happens then to your score is it drops to the 3. Okay, so that means your highest score in this item is a 3. Now, if I were to score 2 yeses, then I only drop the half score here. So I could potentially score a 4. But in order to score that 5, I'd have to score yes for all 3. So every item is scored that way. So that's kind of how scoring works. The next part of the book to kind of look at is your notes for clarification. Notes for clarification does exactly what it says it does. It clarifies what you might read in this upper part of the book. So a good example for this, I like to go to, well, you see my notes here, but we're going to use like provision for relaxation and comfort. So let's say this is your cozy area. Under 5.3 here, see it says many soft toys accessible much of the day. And there's a little asterisk there. The asterisk is the indicator that tells you go down and look in your notes for clarification. And it explains what they mean by many. So many soft toys accessible, how many is many? So if you come down here to notes for clarification, many means at least 10 soft toys, and at least 2 per child if there are more than 5 children. So that's kind of how the notes for clarification works. So anything you see at the top, if you have questions and there's an asterisk, chances are the answers are going to be down in the notes for clarification. So don't discount those. Look for those answers because they may be there. And usually when you're scoring, it will build on itself. So notice here, like to score a 3, it says 3 or more soft toys accessible. To score 5 is that many soft toys accessible, which means at least 10 or 2 per child. So it kind of builds on itself, the next step up as far as quality goes. Okay, so the next part in the book that's important for you to know, underneath notes for clarification, under most items, not all of them, but many of them, you're going to see questions. So the questions are here. And what happens after an assessment, you will go through an interview process, or the lead teacher in each room will go through an interview process. And they'll ask questions, and the questions they're asking are questions for things that they did not see during their observations. So an example of that is right here. It says, when they were in the room, they didn't see cots or mats were visible during the observation, and they left before nap time, or they didn't see nap time. So they're going to ask you questions about nap time. So a possible question might be, where are the children's cots or mats stored? And you see the number is 5.1 here. So if I look up at 5.1, routine care areas conveniently arranged, cribs, cots placed for easy access, and so on and so on. So that's the answer that they're looking for. So if I don't see cots in the room, well, where do you keep your cots? You've got to be able to answer that question so they can score that item. Your scores are based on what they see and what you tell them. So you keep that in mind when you're going through that interview process, that what you say is going to affect your score. So in this instance, they are looking to hear you say something like, well, they're stored in the closet in the classroom, or they're stored just outside the door in the hallway. Well, one of the reasons that might affect your score is because if it's in the hallway or it's stored down the hall, then it's not convenient. So that would affect the score here. That means it's not convenient. I can't score a yes here, which means your score could potentially drop to that 3 or that 4, depending on the answers or the responses to the remaining items in the column. So I think that's pretty much your crash course into the book. I am going to go to the beginning of the book a little bit, because you'll see in the beginning that there are going to be things that might be important for you to know. You're going to see definitions. You're going to see accessible. What does accessible mean? Well, accessible means that children can reach and use them. So if items are accessible, then you're going to score well in many areas. But if they're not accessible, for instance, if they're in a locked cabinet, and a toddler or even a preschooler probably cannot get into a locked cabinet, so these items aren't going to be accessible. And one of the reasons that word is very important is because accessibility depends on scores in many areas. So for infants and toddlers, there are items that have to be accessible for what they call, let me see if that term is in here. I happen to not notice, but much of the day. So it's down here in extra notes, much of the day. And I know you can't see that very well. Let me see if I can pull it up better. Okay, so much of the day, they're talking about accessibility, access to materials, children's access to materials. And that would include your book area, your art materials, fine motor, dramatic play. Accessibility has to happen much of the day. How much time is much of the day? Well, it means here, most of the time that any child may be awake and able to play. So if a child is able to play and yet they're prevented from accessing a book or from accessing an item, a toy, then you kind of lost much of the day, which will affect you in many areas of the environment rating scale. So if I were to go back to that, let's see, you're going to see accessibility, well, here for the cozy area, you're going to see here much of the day. It says it right here. You're going to see it, let's see, if I go to books, you're going to see it much of the day here. So under books, much of the day. So if books are not accessible to them for much of the day, for some reason, they don't have access to books, then you've lost the potential to score that minimal here in this instance for a 3. So your highest score here would be a 2 or possibly even a 1, depending on the rest of your answers. And then you hit it again here under fine motor materials. You won't hit it there. You'll hit it under art. Let's see. I think art's a little different for infants and toddlers. Music and movement here much of the day. Much of the day here for the block area. Dramatic play here, and so on and so on. So that's not, accessibility is not something you want to play with. You want to make sure your infants and toddlers have plenty of accessibility, because that can really work to lower your score and your average score. For ERS, it's a little different. It's instead of much of the day, what it says, ERS with accessibility is going to say, I'm sorry, let's see, a substantial portion of the day. So that's here, substantial portion of the day. And a substantial portion of the day means 1/3 of the day that the center is open. So if you're open for a 12-hour day, that means all of those items that we discussed have to be accessible to the children for at least 4 hours a day. 4 complete hours of day for every child. So kind of keep that in mind too. I'm not going to dwell on that right now because I think that may come up later. But if you just look through here, you'll see other things. You'll see terms, weather permitting. Again, accessible here. Let me go back to the ERS book we were looking at and see what other terms might have come up there. Let's see, much of the day, weather permitting, some and many, and that's where the notes for clarification come in. What's the difference between some and many? Those kinds of things. So that is, I'm going to stop sharing here, but that actually is your crash course into the book. And from what I remember, you did have books available in your office. I don't know if you have them in your classroom or not, but I encourage you to become familiar with those books. And if you want to know something about the assessment and what you absolutely have to have and to be doing, start to familiarize yourself with those books. So I'll reach out to you again next week with our next stage, and let me think about it a little bit, and then I'll let you know what we're going to be discussing next time. But your assignment this week is to find one of these books and to become familiar. Look for some of the things that we talked about today. Okay? It was good talking to you. I hope I get to meet each of you soon.